Hello. What we will be learning today is all about human memory, encoding, storage, retention, and retrieval. Chapter 6 of the cognitive psychology subject. Looking in our current topic, memory can be defined as the power or process of reproducing or recalling what has been learned and retained, especially through associative mechanisms. Also, memory is the store of things learned and retained from an organism's activity or experience as evidenced by modification of structure or behavior or by recall and recognition. Before we try to remember and forget about things, let us look upon the following questions and try to remember from our memory the informations in order to answer the following question. First, who is the President of the Philippines? Then, what is today's date? Next, what did you have for breakfast? Next, what does your best friend or friend look like? And what does your friend's voice sounds like? Can you imitate him or her? Then, what were some of your experiences when you first started college? Can you still remember? Lastly, how do you tie your shoelaces? These are the few of the informations that we can easily recall and retrieve from our memory. But in order to do that, there are specific processes that needs to be done to finally understand and grasp what does memory really mean. This would be the start of our discussion regarding the processes of memory. Memory is the means by which we retain and draw on our past experiences to use that information in the present. It's a process that refers to the dynamic mechanisms associated with storing, retaining, and retrieving information about the past experiences. Other words that can be attached or attributed to memory are recollection, remembering, reminiscing, evocation, reminding, echoing, and impression. Now, let us look upon this Atkinson and Schifrin standard model of memory that was first proposed in 1968. So Richard Atkinson and Richard Schifrin suggest in their theory of memory that there are specific components which are part of human memory. So may components daw. It is an attempt to explain how process of memory works and suggests that there is a multi-store model that the brain uses to retain this information. So you can see here, meron tayong mga nakikitang three stores, no? The three basic stores, which is the sensory, short-term, and the long-term store. Okay. Since 1890, the idea that different stores are used by brain to retain information between primary and secondary information has been widely accepted. What Atkinson and Schifrin attempted to provide is an explanation that includes different types of memory such as long-term and short-term memory. Okay, so we can look upon these three components of memory according to their theory. We have here the sensory register or the sensory store. We have here the short-term store and the long-term store. So sensory register store is where any sensory information that has been collected by the brain will enter a person's memory, including detailed visual, auditory, and haptic, which eventually no, turn in what we call decays. No? Unti-unti rin siyang nagde-decay. Next, we have what we call the short-term store or STS. It is also called working memory. So these are short-term memories of recent events that may need to be immediately recalled for some reason. Like when you what did you last eat in your breakfast, or a contact number of someone that you have to load in a retail store. So it has its control processes such as rehearsal, coding, decision, retrieval, and strategies. Next, we have what we call the long-term store or LTS. This is where information is rehearsed, allowing for short-term memories to be stored for an indefinite period. So recalling these memories often requires a trigger. So it is usually called permanent memory store. So its risk is forgetting, similar to short-term store. Okay, let's proceed. Okay. So encoding and transfer information, we have here the following: short-term storage, long-term storage, transfer of information from short-term to long-term memory, we have the rehearsal, and the organization of information. Continue. This is the stages of memory. So, para mas matandaan, meron tayong three stages. We have encoding, storage, and retrieval. Each one represents a stage of the processing. So first, we would look upon encoding. So similar to the documents that we encode in our computers, encoding refers to how you transform a physical sensory input into a kind of representation that can be placed into memory. Storage naman, on the other hand, refers to how you retain encoded information in the memory. So paano natin napapanatili? So, and lastly, retrieval is how we gain access to the information that is stored in our memory. Paano natin na-retrieve, no? Or nakukuha yung memory na store natin when we have encoded it. Okay? So, encoding and transfer informations. So, let us look upon the forms of encoding. Ano-ano nga ba yung pamamaraan para mag-encode tayo ng information? See? Okay. So let us look upon the short-term storages. So Conrad and colleagues in 1964 has a research where participants were visually represented with several series of 6 letters at rate of 0.75 seconds per letter. So the letters used in the various lists were B, C, F, M, N, P, S, T, V, and X. Immediately after the letters were presented, participants were asked to write down each list of 6 letters in the order given. Instead of recalling the letters they were supposed to recall, participants substituted letters that sounded like correct letters. So another group of participants simply listened to single letters in a setting that had noise in the background. Thus, we seem to encode visually presented letters by how they sound, but not by how they look. Okay? Yep. The Conrad experiment shows that the importance in short-term memory of an acoustic code rather than a visual code. So, mas malakas daw yung impact ng acoustic code rather than visual code when we try to store something in our short-term memory. So, in 1966, Bailey argued that short-term memory relies primarily on an acoustic rather than a semantic code. So, when we are talking about semantic, we would be looking on the words and letters. So, acoustically confusable words are the following: map, cab, mad, man, and cap. And acoustically distinct words are the following: cow, pit, day, rig, and bun. Semantically similar words are the following: big, long, large, wide, and broad. And semantically dissimilar words are the following: old, foul, late, hot, strong. You can see their differences. Thus, encoding in short-term memory appears to be primarily acoustic, but there may be some secondary semantic encoding as well. So, hindi lang pwedeng naka-base ang ating short-term memory sa acoustic. Though napatunayan sa researches na mas malakas ang acoustic codes, no, para ma-retain yung mga short-term memories, pero hindi natin i-disregard yung mga secondary semantic as well. We are more prone to forgetting visual information than acoustic information daw. Example, so remembering a telephone number from long ago is more likely to remember how it sounds when you say it to yourself than to remember a visual image of it. Example, paano ba tayo nagkakabisa ng isang phone number? Binabasa ba natin paulit-ulit sa isip natin? Or sinasabi natin yung word usually? Or yung numbers? Usually, what happens is, no, we tend to remember and encode this information by remembering how we sound like when we say it. Okay? Now we would go to the long-term storage. So most information is stored in long-term memory is primarily semantically encoded. So by words. So participants were remembering words by clustering them into categories. So encoding of information in long-term memory is not exclusively semantic, however. There is also evidence for visual encoding. And acoustic information can be encoded and long-term memory too. So, kung ang ating short-term storage or short-term memory ay mas nagpa-function with the acoustic codes, ang ating long-term storage naman ay primarily encoded semantically or by words, no? But we would not disregard that there are also visual encoding and acoustic information in our long-term storage. So one of our devices in cognitive neuroscience, which is the functional magnetic resonance imaging or fMRI, has studies that found out that the brain areas that are involved in encoding can be, but do not necessarily have to be involved in retrieval. So these are the parts. So anterior medial prefrontal cortex in the right fusiform face area. It is responsible for encoding and retrieval. The left fusiform face area is somewhat related to or working also in the encoding. Left parahippocampal place area or PPA is also responsible for encoding. We have the medial temporal and prefrontal regions that is also aiding in memory process in general. So these are the parts in our primary cortex that aids or are involved, but they do not necessarily have to be. They may aid in, but they are not primarily responsible for it. Okay, now we proceed on the encoding and transfer of information. Transfer of information from short-term memory to long-term memory. So, paano to nangyari? You think, is it possible? It is possible, rather, to put our short-term memory into our long-term memory. For example, we have tried to remember our contact number before. From the first time uh, we got it, no? And afterwards, no, through repeatedly saying our contact number, repeatedly giving it to other persons, eventually we could easily remember our contact number without even looking at it or having a cheat code. Hindi na natin kailangan ng kodigo pa. So from short term to long term, when competing information interferes with our storing information, we speak of interference. So tandaan natin yung word na interference ha. Meron ng specific memory or information sa ating brain, but there would come a time that there is what we call the competing information, no? Natatapal dun sa information na yun. For example, we have a memory that we thought to be right, no? Eventually, we have learned through time na may mas tama palang information nun. So for example, uh, when I was in elementary, akala ko ang spelling ng there ay Thier, no? Pero ang tama palang spelling, no? And later ko na na-realize, elementary times then is Their. When we forget facts just because time passes, we speak of decay. Some form of non-declarative memory are highly volatile and decay quickly. So ano yung mga information na pwede mag-decay? For example, meron kang specific username and password na ginagamit mo dati ng paulit-ulit. Pero after a year, hindi na mo na ginagamit yung account na yun, no? Magkakaroon ng tinatawag na decay at hindi mo na maalala. For example, can you still remember your Yahoo Mail account and Yahoo password? No? Since ngayon, mas laganap na ang paggamit ng Gmail at konti na lang gumagamit ng Yahoo, no? May mga iba sa atin na nag-decay na yung memory natin regarding our Yahoo Mail and our Yahoo password. Some forms of non-declarative memory are highly volatile and decay quickly nga daw, sabi dito. So other non-declarative forms are maintained more readily, particularly as a result of repeated practice or repeated conditioning. Okay, let's proceed. Entrance into long-term declarative memory may occur through a variety of processes. First, by deliberately attending to the information to comprehend it. No, paulit-ulit nating ina-attend yung information para mas maintindihan natin. And then, making connections or associations between the new information and what we already know rather, and understand. So, we make connections by integrating the new data into our existing schemas of stored information. This process of integrating new information into stored information is called consolidation. So, meron na tayong stored memory regarding a specific information. Then we would add another, no? It is called consolidation. Consolidation. We also have what we call the metacognition. So metacognition is our ability to think about the control of our own processes of thoughts and a way of enhancing our thinking. It's thinking within thinking. We have what we call the meta-memory strategies. One component of metacognition that involves reflecting on our own memory processes with a view to improving our memory. It's like looking upon our memory and trying to analyze what is happening in that memory. For example, it's a specific circumstance, no? A specific event, or a specific place, no? Tinatry nating balikan. Next, we also have what we call rehearsal. So one technique people use for keeping information active is repeatedly reciting them or reciting an information. Ito usually yung ginagawa ng mga individual or mga students kapag nagre-review sila. Kayo ba, ginagawa niyo ba itong rehearsal? No? That you repeatedly recite a specific term, words, in order to remember them. Kapag nagre-review kayo, paano ba? Binabasa niyo lang, tapos okay nang mabasa niyo? Or paulit-ulit niyong binabasa hanggang maalala ninyo? So that is also a rehearsal. So we also have what we call the practice effect. No? Practice effect. So rehearsal can be applied into other things or into other circumstances, such as singing. When we tend to rehearse, no, we repeatedly sing a specific song in order for us to remember the specific lines, a specific melody, and a specific tone. No? So we have what we call the overt or allowed and obvious to anyone watching. No? So ito yung practice effects na sinasabi natin. So yung overt, ito yung talagang sinasabi natin, yung nire-review natin. For example, tinatandaan natin, sa cognitive psychology, ito yung ganyan, ito yung definition niya, ganyan, ganyan. Nagsasalita tayo. Pero kapag covert, no, sa isip lang natin. No, usually, ang kasama nito ay movements. For example, nag-i-snap tayo ng finger or meron tayong something na inaalala para sa matandaan natin. Alam ko sa notes ko na doon sa top left eh. Pero hindi natin kailangan sabihin. Pero, it is silent and hidden in our practice effects. So we also have what we call the elaborative rehearsal. No? The individual somehow elaborates the item to be remembered. Such rehearsal makes the item either more meaningfully integrated into what the person already knows or more meaningfully connected to one another and therefore more memorable. One example of this is also learning the definition of a word or definition of a term. No? We tend to have what we call the exact definition. Pero when we use this elaborative rehearsal, no, we tend to define this word in our own understanding. No? Nire-rehearse natin siya para mas madali natin ma-integrate, no, sa ating memory. Kapag nagets na natin, ito yung gist ng term na yun, ito yung definition, no, na hindi nalalayo sa original definition, ito yun. We also have what we call the maintenance rehearsal. So the individual simply repeat repetitiously rehearses the item to be repeated. Such rehearsal temporarily maintains information in short-term memory without transferring the information to long-term memory. No? For example, yung tulad sa sinabi natin kanina, yung kapag mayroon kayong sinasabing kinakabisadong contact number at papaloadan nyo, for example, yung kung sino man, for example, yung tita nyo or nanay niyo. Okay, for example, kapag nyo, 0928, ganyan, 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 ganyan. Uulit-ulit nyo, 0928-3654-3321, ganyan. 3654-3321. So, napupunta siya sa short-term memory, no? Pero after a while, kapag na-accomplish nyo na yung task, no, nagawa nyo na siya, no, mawawala na rin siya. No, it will decay. Hindi siya natatransfer sa long-term memory. Okay? So, people's memory for information depends on how they acquire it. Their memories tend to be good when they use distributed practice, so learning in which various sessions are spaced over time. So we also have what we call the mass practice. It's learning in which sessions are crammed together in a very short space of time. Example, we can try to rehearse naman or review our notes, no? Before our quiz or exercise every now and then, tinatry natin tinatandaan yung mga naging lesson natin. But what we usually do is mass practice, no? Yung sobrang daming information, tinatry nating inaaral in session, no? In a very short space of time. For example, bukas ng exam, nagre-review tayo before the exam. Or bukas ng exam, nagre-review tayo the day or the night before the exam. That is mass practice. Or sinasabay-sabay natin yung iba't ibang subject, no? Which sometimes has an impact in storing memory. So we also have the spacing effect. To maximize the effect on long-term recall, the spacing should ideally be distributed over a month rather than days or week. For example, every week, no, meron kang specific task na ginagawa. Every Friday kailangan naglalaba ako, or every Friday kailangan nire-review ko yung buong lesson. That is called the spacing effect. Okay? So how about sleep? Does sleep help in memory consolidation? So there are five different sleep stages now that differ in their EEG patterns. So dreaming takes place during stage 5, the so-called REM sleep. No, REM sleep is particularly important for memory consolidation. No, so tatanungin natin, mahalaga ba ang pagtulog sa pag-store ng memory? Yes. So better learning will increase in the proportion of REM stage sleep after exposure to learning situation. So mas madaling ma-store or mas ma-store natin na mabuti ang information kapag meron tayong enough na sleep at rest. So the positive influence of sleep on memory consolidation is seen across age groups. So meron tayong researches at napatunayan to. People who suffer from insomnia, a disorder that deprives the sufferer of much needed sleep, have trouble with memory consolidation. Kaya nga, mapapatunayan natin, yung mga kulang sa tulog, yung mga talagang lagi nagpupuyat, at saka yung mga ang trabaho talaga nila ay ang effect ay makakompromise ang kanilang sleep, mas madali silang maging makakalimutin. So prolonged sleep deprivation seem to affect such cell development negatively. So thus, a good night's sleep, which includes plenty of REM stage sleep, aids in memory consolidation. So tulog-tulog din pag may time. Now we would look upon the neuroscience, the study of neuroscience, and its connection to memory consolidation. So cells of the hippocampus is one of the parts of our limbic system that were activated during initial learning are reactivated during subsequent period of sleep. It is as if they are replaying the initial learning episodes to achieve consolidation into long-term storage. So the hippocampus acts as a rapid learning system. It temporarily maintains new experiences until they can be appropriately assimilated into more gradual neocortical representation systems of the brain. So parang nagkakaroon din ng replay sa isip natin, and later on, no, hindi na uh, hindi na tayo mahihirapan na i-retrieve yung memory kasi na-consolidate na siya sa ating brain. So the benefit of distributed practice seem to occur because we have a relatively rapid learning system in the hippocampus that become activated during sleep. So kung titingnan nyo, napakahalaga talaga ng pagtulog. No? Kung gusto natin na hindi tayo mental block, for example, may exam sa kinabukasan, or kung gusto natin na hindi na maalala natin or ma-recall natin yung mga minemorize natin mabuti, no? We need a good night's sleep. These rapidly learned memories become integrated into our more permanent long-term memory system. So, ganun. Now, we would look on the organization of information. So how do we organize our information? So participants create their own consistent organization and then group their recall by the subjective units they create. So we have what we call the mnemonic devices. So mnemonic devices are specific techniques to help you memorize lists of words. Thus, when choosing a method for encoding information for subsequent recall, you should consider the purpose for recalling the information. For example, look at these hands below. So, para matandaan natin, no? Para matandaan natin, you can try it to yourself. Kung ang specific month ba ay mag-fall into uh, having 31 days, 30 days, or 29 days, no? Pwede natin gamitin mnemonic device ang ating knuckles. So, makita nyo dyan, January has 31 days, no? Yung deferred groove is February, 29 days. Then March is 31. April and May is 31. June is 30. July is 31. August is 31. September is 30. October is 31. November is 30. And December is 31. O, diba? May bago kayong natutunan. See? The use of mnemonic devices and other techniques for aiding memory involves meta-memory or understanding and reflection upon our memory and how to improve it. So reminders. So reminders are externally memory aids to enhance the likelihood that we will remember important information. Kaya nga yung mga phones natin, minsan may mga reminders pero hindi naman natin nagagamit. No? Usually, ang naging reminders natin, we can use our alarm for us to be reminded. Example of this are taking your notes, shopping lists, timers, and alarms, asking people to help you remember things. Ayan. So kayo ba kapag kayo ay namimili sa palengke, no? Kayo ba ay nag-grocery or nagsha-shopping, no? Kayo ba ay naglilista? Meron kayong listahan ng bibilhin, no? Or para ba maalala nyo na 3 minutes lang dapat maluto ang isang noodles or pancit canton, gumagamit ba kayo ng timer or tinatansya nyo lang, no? Yung iba naman gumagamit ng alarm. For example, sa pagbe-bake, no, gumagamit ako minsan ng alarm dahil napakahalaga ng time, no, kapag niluluto mo ang specific food sa baking. Okay? So we also have what we call the forcing functions. So these are physical constraints that prevents us from acting without at least considering the key information to be remembered. So example is to ensure that you remember to take your notebook to class, you might lean the notebook against the door through which you must pass to go to class. Or para maalala, no? Para maalala mo na dapat pakainin mo yung dog, no? Naglalagay ka ng notes sa refrigerator ninyo or gumagawa ka ng something na eventually makikita mo para mas madali mo maalala. So let us look upon the mnemonic devices. So these are the following mnemonic devices that I have gathered. So first, we have what we call the categorical clustering. So categorical clustering is organizing a list of items into a set of categories. No? Paano natin matatandaan? No? Usually, kinakategorize natin sila. Minsan sa phone natin, ginagawa natin to. No? Pinagsasama-sama natin itong categories yung mga folder ng applications natin. For example, meron tayong folder for utilities, meron tayong folder for social media, meron tayong folder for creativity, meron tayong for finance, meron tayong folder for games, meron tayong folder for shopping and food, no? Meron tayong categories. Next, we have what we call the interactive image. So we create interactive image that link isolated words in a list. No? We can use this interactive image by using their colors. For example, kung trip nyo na pagsamasamahin sa isang folder naman, yung mga same colors ng application pwede din. Interactive image yun dahil meron silang similar colors. Or pwede nyo rin silang i-categorize according to their alphabet. So lahat ng F magkakasama, lahat ng apps na G magkakasama, no? For example. So you also have what we call the peg word system. Peg word system associate each new word with a word on a previously memorized list and form an interactive image between the two words. For example, dito yung inaaral natin minsan yung kay Freud, no? Para matandaan natin yung psychosexual theory ni Freud, no? Ang ginagamit natin ay OA palagi. OA palagi is already a word, but these specific words have their meaning in their acronyms or in set of letters such as oral, anal, panic, calic, latency, etc., etc. So you also have what we call the method of loci. So it's visually walking around an area with distinctive landmarks that you know well, and then link the various landmarks to specific items to be remembered. For example, saan na nga ba banda yung saan na nga ba yung pure gold? Yung pure gold medyo tapat siya ng Jollibee, no? Tabi siya ng Chowking. So meron tayong ganun, method of loci. Or saan na banda yung yeyeye? Dun sa likod ng Jollibee. Or saan na or saan mo na makikita yung SM Central sa Olongapo, dun sa gilid ng Marikit Park. So that is also called a method of loci, which is also a mnemonic device. Para matandaan natin yung Spanish word for grass, which is pasto, kailangan nyo munang matandaan yung word na pasta, which is a familiar word to you, no? So every time na nire-remember mo yung Spanish ng word na grass, which is pasto, matatandaan mo muna yung word na pasta. So that is keyword system. So term storage may be facilitated by several factors. So what does facilitates term storage? So first, rehearsal. Rehearsal of the information, particularly if the information is elaborated meaningfully. Next is organization, such as categorization of the information. Next, we use the mnemonic devices, no? Yung mga nabanggit natin kanina. And we also use external memory aids rather, such as writing list or taking notes, and knowledge acquisition through distributed practice across various study sessions rather than through mass practice. So again, mas better pa rin na distributed ang practice para mas ma-remember natin kaysa mass practice or yung isang bultuhang practice lang na isasagad-sagad para sa pag-retain ng memory. Okay, now we would go to the retrieval. So ito yung mga pag-uusapan natin sa retrieval sa following slides. Retrieval from short-term memory, is it parallel or serial processing? Exhausting or self-terminating processing? The winner, a serial exhausted model with some qualifications. Retrieval from long-term memory and intelligence and retrieval. So let's continue. Retrieval from short-term memory. So is retrieval parallel or serial processing? So parallel processing refers to the simultaneous handling of multiple operations, while serial processing refers to operations being done one after another. Paano ba natin nire-retrieve ang information? Paisa-isa ba? Such as serial processing? Or sabay-sabay nating inaalala? No? Such as parallel processing nga. Okay. We also have what we call the exhaustive serial processing. So exhaustive serial processing implies that participants always checks the test digit against all digits in a positive set, even if a match were found partway through the list. Okay, paano ibig sabihin ito exhaustive serial processing? For example, ang ating exam ay matching type, no? So, para ma-exhaust natin yung process, no? Para malaman natin yung pinakasagot, hahanapin natin yung sagot, yung word. Kapag nakita natin yung tamang sagot, no? At tinignan pa rin natin yung mga other words kahit nakita natin yung tamang sagot, yung feeling natin tamang sagot, that is exhaustive serial processing. Yung self-terminating serial processing naman, it implies that the participant would check the test digit against only those digits need to make a response. No? Hindi na natin titignan pa yung mga other choices. Kapag alam na natin na yung sagot, hahanapin na lang natin yung sagot na yun at isasagot na natin. No? Again, para makita natin yung pagkakaiba, kapag exhaustive serial processing, even in multiple choice, no? Babasahin muna natin mabuti lahat ng choices. Kahit meron tayong nakikitang tamang sagot, feeling natin, babasahin pa rin natin lahat. Yung self-terminating serial processing, kapag alam na natin yung sagot dun sa question, hahanapin na lang natin yung sagot kahit hindi na natin basahin yung ibang choices. So that is exhaustive or self-terminating process. Next, we would look on the process of forgetting and memory distortion. So interference theory and decay theory. Again, no? Yung interference is defined as something that would interfere into a prior knowledge that we already knew. No? For example, meron tayong knowledge sa isang bagay na ang pusa ay lahat ay brown. Pero afterwards, nakakita tayo ng pusa na black, then eventually, nagkakaroon tayo ng interference. No? And we'll accept that fact na merong pusa na brown at black. So interference theory refers to the view that forgetting occurs because recall of certain words interferes with recall of other words. So retroactive interference or retroactive inhibition. It occurs when newly acquired knowledge impedes the recall of older material. New information inhibits the ability to remember old information. For example, dati ayos lang na umiinom, for example lang to ayos lang na umiinom ng mefenamic acid kahit puntis. Pero later on, dahil sa bagong knowledge na na-acquire natin, nalaman natin na hindi pala, no? Na hindi pala dapat umiinom ng mefenamic acid kapag buntis. Na example lang to hindi ko sure itong fact na to. Next, we also have what we call the proactive interference or proactive inhibition. It occurs when material that was learned in the past impedes the learning of new material. Old information inhibits the ability to remember new information. Yung hindi mo na siya parang hindi mo ma-accept yung new change or new information kasi ano ka na naniniwala ka na yung old information ang tama. Hindi nung bata ako ganito yun pinapainom naman ako ng mefenamic or yung sugat ko ay binubudburan naman ng gamot, gumagaling naman. For example, mga ganong facts, no? So that is proactive interference. So as a visual representation, we can see here in the proactive interference, meron tayong previous material, then may na-learn tayong new material, no? Mapo-forget natin yung material A. Mapo-forget natin letter A kasi meron tayong new material, no? However, yung B naman, meron tayong old material na nalaman at may bagong material na binibigay sa atin, no? Makakalimutan natin yung B kasi nasanay tayo sa dating material and feeling natin yun yung tama. Okay. To continue in the interference theory, we have what we call the serial position curve. It represents the probability of recall of a given word given its serial position in a list. So para mas maintindihan natin yung serial position curve, for example, kayo ay gumawa ng grocery lists, no? Sinulat natin doon sa grocery list, bibili tayo ng itlog, ng hummus, or ng mayonnaise, bibili tayo ng margarine, bibili tayo ng kape, ng mga ganyan. Pero pagdating mo sa grocery list, no, nakalimutan mo, no, nakalimutan mo yung sa grocery rather, nakalimutan mo yung grocery list mo sa bahay. So, ano yung maging interference doon? So, matatandaan mo lang is yung nasa serial position curve, which is usually yung pinakauna mong sinulat, itlog, at saka yung pinaka-last, yung kape. Pero yung mga nasa gitna, hindi na natin madaling matandaan. So we also have what we call the recency effect. So it refers to the superior recall of the words at the near end of the list. Yun yung sinabi natin kanina. And the primacy effect is refers to the superior recall of the words at the near the beginning of the list. So serial position is either the beginning or the end. So under that is the recency effect and the primacy effect. So minsan, no, may maganon tayo. No, usually ginagamit natin yung recency effect kapag nagkakabisada tayo minsan ng number, no? Ikaw ba yung may number ending in 68402? No, that is a recency effect. Kapag primacy effect, siya ba yung may number na 09988, 5858, yung mga ganun. No, primacy effect yun, yung mga naunang part ng list or digits numbers. So the decay theory. So it asserts that information is forgotten because of the gradual disappearance rather than displacement of the memory trace. Now, for example, meron kayong kinabisadong number before. Hindi niyo siya naisulat at hindi niyo siya naalala. Pero eventually, no, kinabukasan, nung sinusubukan niyo na ng maalala, nagkaroon ng tinatawag na decay. No? Hindi niya na maalala. For example, look at this picture. The next day, he tried to remember Sally's phone number, but it had faded over the past 3 days. It is an example of decay theory. So, hindi niya na matandaan yung mga last parts. So, nangyayari din ba ito sa inyo? So, the constructive nature of memory. So, let us look at the following. The autobiographical memory, memory distortions, the eyewitness testimony, paradigm repressed memories, and the effect of context on memories. Ito yung next nating pag-usapan sa following slides. Okay. When we say reconstructive, it involves use of various strategies, such as searching for cues, drawing for inferences, for retrieving the original memory traces of our experiences, and then rebuilding the original experiences as a basis for retrieval. No? For example, nagpunta na kayo sa isang lugar, no? And you try to reconstruct, no? Kung paano yung experience nyo dati dun sa similar na lugar na yon. Nire-rebuild nyo. We also have what we call the constructive. Prior experience affects how we recall things that we actually recall from a memory. Okay? So, almost similar sila, but prior to experience, it affects how we recall things that what we actually recall from a memory. So, prior experience siya, nangyari na talaga siya dati. Tapos, we try to recall things, no, that is actually in our memory. So, reconstructive, so merong specific strategies, may cues. For example, dito ako sa lugar na to, ganito pumunta, dito ako sa, dito ako bumili, ganyan. That's reconstructive. Parang inuulit natin, no, the experience. So, autobiographical memory. So, autobiographical memory refers a memory of an individual's history. It can be of illness. It can be something that has a very strong impact to us. We have what we call the flashball memory. So, it is a memory of an event that is so powerful that a person remembers the event as vividly as if it was indelibly preserved on a film. Yung ang hirap makalimutan, no? It can be surprising, important, or emotional. It can be from a tragedy, yung na-disgrasya. It can be of may high emotional impact sa atin. For example, breakup, no? For example, ito yung first day na sinagot ka ng jowa mo, no? For example, ito yung day na pinanganak ng kapatid mo. No? For example, ito yung day na namatay yung iyong favorite pet, no? It is called flashbulb memory. No, parang kung titingnan natin siya sa memory, sobrang vivid niya at nakikita pa rin natin siya sa isip natin. It can also be a traumatic experience or a negative experience from before. So now we would be looking on the memory distortion. So in order to understand memory distortion, tignan natin yung 7 sins of memory according to Schachter of 2001. So what is the first sin of memory? First is what we call transience. So transience is fading of memory very quickly. So the state of fact is lasting for a short time. So general deterioration of a specific memory over time. It can be especially true with episodic memory because every time an episodic memory is recalled, It is re-encoded within the hippocampus, altering the memory each time you recall it. Transience is caused because of interference. So, ano yung example nito? For example, meron kang kaibigan na umuo ka, no? Napupunta ka, tara, tara pre, punta tayo sa ganitong lugar sa ganitong araw. Umuo ka na sa kanya. So, yung kaibigan mo, iniisip niya na sasama ka. Then, before that event, no, may isang important event na pupuntahan ka pala, and because of transience, no, nakalimutan mo na kailan mo palang pumunta dun sa pag-i-invite ng friend mo, no? Nag-fade yung memory because of that interference. Okay, let's proceed. Next is absent-mindedness. This is the second sin of memory. Absent-mindedness is where a person shows inattentive or forgetful behavior. So lost in thought that one does not realize what one is doing, no, or what is happening. For example, preoccupied to the extent of being unaware of one's immediate surroundings, no? Yung tipong naglalakad ka, nagte-text, maya-maya, hindi mo napansin na patawid ka na pala at meron ng paparating na sasakyan, no? Or ikaw ay nagda-drive, tapos bigla kang nagte-text, no? Kinikilig-kilig ka pa, mamaya bumangga ka na. So that is absent-mindedness too. So this form of memory breakdown involves problems at the point where attention and memory interface. So common errors of this type include misplacing of keys, no? Usually happens, so, no? Nakakalimutan kung saan nilagay yung susi, saan ibinaba yung cellphone, yung eyeglasses, or forgetting appointments because at the time of encoding, sufficient attention was not paid on what would later need to be recalled. No? Wala yung full attention mo. Okay, let's proceed. Third sin is blocking. So it can be attributed to the tip of the tongue phenomenon that has been discussed in our previous chapter. So people sometimes have something they know but and should remember but they can't, no? Usually ito ay naglalay sa ating preconscious state. So blocking is when the brain tries to retrieve or encode information but other memory interferes with it. Blocking is primary cause of tip of the tongue phenomenon. It's a temporary inaccessibility of stored information. So tulad nga ng example ko dati dito, no, hindi ko maalala yung kulay ng specific damit. No, ang naalala kong word ay turmeric. Yun yung memory na pumapasok sa akin. Pero yun pala, okay. So yung term pala na dapat ko inaalala instead of turmeric is mustard. Yun yung kulay ng damit na inaalala ko, no? So it is caused by blocking. So next is the misattribution. So people often cannot remember where they heard what they heard or read what they read. Sometimes people think they saw things they did not see or heard things they did not hear. No? For example, may bibigyan natin dito eyewitness testimony. Parang feeling ko nakita ko siyang pumasok sa bahay nila eh. Pero pala hindi naman talaga siya pumasok. No? This is misattribution. Or narinig kitang nagsabi ng ganitong salita eh, pero hindi naman pala talaga. No? That is also a sin of memory. So it entails correct recollection of information with incorrect recollection of the source of that information. So pinipilit natin na totoong narinig natin or nakita or ganito yung memory, pero yun pala hindi pala yung totoong nangyari. So for example, a person who witnesses a murder after watching a television program may incorrectly blame the murder on someone she saw on television program. So this error has profound consequences in legal systems because of its unacknowledged prevalence and the confidence which is often placed in a person's ability to know the source of information important to suspect identification. No? Mali yung pag-attribute natin. Yung hindi naman pala talaga siya yung sumaksak. Pero dahil sa memory natin, no? Ang pagkakaalala natin siya yun eh. Pero yun pala hindi. So, nakakalungkot kung sa legal process to nangyari. Dahil, no, nabibigyang sala yung wala naman talagang sala. And nangyayari pa rin to hanggang ngayon. Next is suggestibility. No? So people are susceptible to suggestions. So if it's suggested to them that they saw something, they may think they remember seeing it. Example, so you witness an argument after school. When later asked about the huge fight that occurred, you recall the memory but unknowingly distort it with exaggerated fabrication because you think of the event as a huge fight instead of simple argument. No? Yung tipong nagtalo lang. Pero nung kwento mo na, no? Talagang nagtalo sila, nagsigawan. Pero hindi naman pala totally nagsigawan. No? But because, no, nagtalo yung word, pakiramdam natin na talagang nagtalo. Or because ito yung kwento sa inyo, oo, talagang nag-away sila, di ba? Oo nga, nag-away nga sila. Also, a witness testimony is altered because the police or attorneys make suggestions during the interview, which causes their already uncertain observation to become distorted memories, no? Nagiging leading. Hindi kaya siya talaga yung pumatay dito, for example, dahil nagda-drug siya, no? Minsan kahit hindi naman yung ganun yung totoong nangyari, pero dahil sa suggestions or dahil sa sinasabing statement ng other person, iniisip natin or ang pupunta sa memory natin, ay oo nga no, feeling ko siya rin po nga talaga kasi po ganito. Okay, so that is suggestibility. And last, your parents tell you that you have always been a good singer. So from then on, you believe you have talent when really your parents were falsely encouraging you, no? For example, sinasabi ng parents mo na, ay, yung anak ko ang pogi-pogi, no? So, ang paningin natin sa sarili natin, sobrang pogi tayo. In reality, medyo pogi lang, no? Hindi ganun ka-pogi. Medyo lang. Okay. So, next is the bias. So, the scene of bias is similar to the scene of suggestibility in that one's current feelings and worldview distort remembrance of past events. So, this can pertain to specific incidences. The general conception one has at certain periods in one's life. This occurs partly because memory is encoded while a person was feeling a certain level of arousal, and certain type of emotion comes to mind more quickly when person is in similar mood. Thus, a contented adult might look back with fondness on their childhood, induced to do so by positive memories from time which may not actually be representative of their average mood during their childhood. For example, pwedeng masabi natin dito, other things is yung mga magulang natin, nung kapanahunan namin, ganito kami, mababait lahat ng kabataan, mababait lahat ng ganito, ganyan, hindi ganito, na ganyan, ganyan, no? Bias yun. Meron tayong bias. Because hindi naman tayo similar ng situation. And paningin nila, no? Ito yung pinaniniwalaan nila ngayon na ganito na yung mga kabataan. Nagbigay sila, for example, ng ganitong brand. For example, dito sa nakikita natin, ito yung totoong details, no? Ito sa picture, no? Ito yung totoong details na nangyari nakita natin. Pero inaalis natin yung mga unwanted nating information, no? Ang nire-retain lang natin sa isip natin yung gusto nating paniwalaan. That is also a bias. For example, sa Korean group, no? Yung mga singing, yung bias is also applicable, no? Merong 5 magagaling lahat ng kumanta or magigiling ang kanilang talent. Pero since meron tayong tinatawag na bias natin, no? Yun ang paningin natin, yung specific individual or tao na yun ang pinakamagaling. That is also a bias. Next is persistence. So, never gonna give you up. So people sometimes remember things as consequential that in a broad context are inconsequential. So pinipilit, no? For example, someone with many successes but one notable failure may remember that single failure better than many successes. This failure of the memory system involves the unwanted recall of information that is disturbing. The remembrance can range from a blunder on a job to a truly traumatic experience, and the persistent recall can lead to formation of phobias, post-traumatic stress disorder, and even suicide in especially disturbing and intrusive instances. So kahit napakarami mo ng achievement in life, no? Pero minsan kang nagkamali, pakiramdam mo failure ka na sa buong buhay mo or pakiramdam mo ay wala ka nang magawa pang tama kahit kung tignan ka ng tao ay very successful ka, no? That is already persistence and it's a sin of our memory, no? Na yung specific memory or specific information ay nagpo-persist sa ating isip. Wherein because of that, hindi na tayo maka-form ng new beginnings or for example, yung sa relationship, dahil sa memory natin ng negative relationship before, no? Naging traumatic na tayo, nagkaroon na tayo ng phobia, no? Parang hindi na tayo maka-form ng new relationships or bagong relationships because of that memory. No, nagpo-persist yung memory na yun sa isip natin. And that is something that we should be aware of and hindi natin dapat pinagwawalang bahala. Okay, now we would look at the eyewitness testimony paradigm. Okay, so being eyewitness in a court, especially in legal matters, is very much stressful. No, usually being an eyewitness is the most common source of wrongful conviction in the United States. Even in the Philippines, no, napakaraming nako-convict because of the wrong information that is given by an eyewitness. No. So, what influences the accuracy of eyewitness testimonies? In general, people are remarkably susceptible to mistakes in eyewitness testimony. They are generally prone to imagine that they have seen things they have not seen. No? So, this may include lineups, as confessions, feedback to eyewitness affected by participants' testimony, and level of stress. No? Kapag may ganitong additional factor, no, maapektuhan yung accuracy ng eyewitness. no? Kaya nga mismo mas maganda na walang bias or walang other factor na pwede mag-contribute para maapektuhan yung details or information na nakita ng eyewitness, no? Kapag ikaw ay in too much stress, no, pwedeng apektuhan yung iyong information na sasabihin or yung memory na sasabihin mo. Kapag may nag-confess sa'yo, no, or may feedback yung eyewitness, kapag ikaw ay na-bribe, kapag ikaw ay na-threaten, no, that will heighten your level of stress, pwedeng maapektuhan yung iyong statement. So, children as eyewitness. Do you think pwede nating panghawakan dito na hindi nagsisinungaling yung bata if they are chosen to be an eyewitness? Let us look at this part. So, children's recollection are particularly susceptible to distortion. So, the younger the child is, the less reliable the testimony of the child can be expected to be. So, when a questioner is coercive or may force na ina-apply or even just seem to want a particular answer, children can be quite susceptible to providing the adult with that he or she wants to hear. No? Children may believe that they recall observing things that others have said they observed. The testimony of children must be interpreted with great caution. So, kaya napakahalaga usually ng psychological, no, approach kapag sa legal matters. So actually, ako mismo ay nilapitan na minsan, no, if pwede ba akong magbigay ng psychological approach or movement dun sa legal processes ng annulment ng marriage. Pero I did not want to because I think I am not that credible yet, no, to give a specific statement of psychological incapacity of one of the spouse or husband or wife, no? And I think there are things that can be processed within our homes, no? Kaya yun lang, siguro may personal ano kasi ako doon kaya medyo mahirap, no? I also have one experience wherein merong dalawang mag-asawa na nagtatalo na pakinggan ko daw both statements nila at sabihin ko daw kung sino yung nagsasabi ng tama o mali or sino yung dapat makinig sa isa, no? Hindi rin ako umano doon. Hindi rin ako pumayag at hindi ako pumunta dahil ayaw kung sa akin na sila nakadepend sa kung anong mangyari sa relationship nila. Eventually, naghiwalay sila, no? But it seems to be better on both parties. Okay? So, can eyewitness testimonies be improved? So, according to Gardewells of 2006, he made several suggestions to improve identification accuracy in lineups. So, presenting only one suspect per lineup, making sure that all people in lineup are reasonably similar to each other, and cautioning witness that the suspect may not be in the lineup at all. No? So, ito daw yung ways para ma-improve yung eyewitness. No? If you could see, no, sa mga series or panood sa ibang bansa, meron silang mga ano eh, yung may pinapapilang tao, tapos tignan mo dito kung sino dito, kung nakikita mo ba dito yung suspects, parang ganun. No? Okay. So, repressed memories. So, are memories that are alleged to have been pushed down onto unconscious because of the stress they cause. So, meron daw memories na napupush down natin sa ating unconscious dahil nga distressing sila. And merong specific emotions attributed na medyo negative para sa atin. Do repressed memories actually exist? So, some therapists may inadvertently plant ideas in their client's head. In this way, they may inadvertently create false memories of events that never took place. Showing that implanted memories are false is often extremely hard to do, and this is illegal, no? So, ito ay totoo, no? Meron tayong repressed memories, no? Pero nasa atin yung way in order how to cope up with it and how to deal with it, no? If it's very hard for us, then we should at least go to someone we trust, go seek a professional advice, and go talk to someone that you think could help you in a way that is healthy, no? Without bias or prejudice. Okay, to continue in the repressed memories. So, noong 1995, si Rodiger and McDermott, nagkaroon sila ng paradigm, no, in studying false memories. So, some of the parts of this has 15 words strongly related to the word sleep. Pero may specific words to na hindi naman siya related. Pero since the title itself tells that it's related to the sleep, no, the individual entails that this word is really related to that. So, it is a false memory. So, why are people so weak in distinguishing what they have heard from what they have not heard? So may tinatawag tayong source monitoring error. which occurs when a person attributes a memory derived from one source to another source. No? For example, meron tayong hindi gumana ng senses that time. For example, may narinig tayong nagsabi ng ganitong word na negative. Paglingon natin, yung isang taong nakita natin. Where in fact, hindi naman pala siya yung nagsabi. Pero dahil sa source monitoring error, no, ang sinasabi ng memory natin, siya yung nagsabi nun, kahit hindi naman siya talaga yung nagsabi nun. You also have what we call the spreading activation. Every time an item is studied, you think of the items related to that item. For example, dito, pinag-aaral natin is repressed memories. May binanggit akong word na something about memory, no? Do you know that repressed memories is studied by Adam Levine and the Maroon 5 in 2019, no? Paniniwalaan nyo because of the spreading activation. Pero based on your prior knowledge and based on the facts, hindi naman to totoo, no? But it is one of the example of spreading activation. So, the effect of context on memory. So, meron daw different effects yung context sa memory, no? Yung mismong content ng specific text. So, first, depende on its emotional intensity, no? Kapag may emotional attributes yung isang memory, no? Pwedeng magkaroon ng distortions or changes. Yung mood natin at the moment, no? Ito yung totoong nangyari, pero yung mood natin at that moment is we're very angry, or yung mood natin at the current moment that we are remembering it, we're very angry, no? And also the state of consciousness. Kapag tayo ay medyo unaware sa surroundings natin that time, no? At yung context ay naiba, no? Iisipin natin na yung naibang context ang totoo, kahit hindi naman yun, because of our unawareness. Also, the environmental context cues rather, no? May impact din daw yung environmental context cues, no? Na hindi yun pwedeng mangyari. For example, hindi pwedeng mangyari yung rape sa simbahan kasi simbahan yun, no? Pwede ring maka-apekto yung context ng simbahan sa act na masama, which is sometimes wrong, no? Na hindi natin dapat dinidistort yung memory or dinidistort yung information because of the context itself. So encoding specificity refers to the fact that that what is recalled depends largely on what is encoded. Okay. So yung fact ay nakadepende lang, no, sa kung ano yung na-encode. No, for example, sa isang family, yung nanay ng bata ay isang nagtitinda ng gulay sa palengke, no? At umabot yung maraming panahon yung na-encode sa kanya, no? Nawala yung nanay, tapos nung bumalik, hinanap niya sa palengke, no? At alam niya na yung nanay niya ay nagtitinda ng gulay doon. No, for example, nawala yung anak for many years. At nung bumalik siya, no? Kasi specifically, naalala niya yung nanay niya ay nagtitinda ng gulay dito, yun yung encoded. So, doon siya mag-rely na fact. Okay. So, this would be your exercise, no? And I hope that you answer it before the deadline that I would give to you. So that will be all. God bless.